Good morning. Today we are going to discuss two short stories for Module 13. One of the short stories is by Chinua Achebe, and its title is Girls at War, while the other one is Emma Etta Aidoo's Two Sisters. The reason I'm going to discuss these two stories together is because they discuss similar themes, despite the fact that one is written by a Nigerian author and the other by a Ghanaian author. Um, the similarity of the problems that they're dealing with might be interesting to view because they deal with post independence issues of these two countries. I'll begin with a little bit of introduction about Emma Etta Aidoo. Achebe's introduction you are already familiar with from The Dead Man's Path. Emma Etta Aidoo is a political figure and an activist in Ghana. Her grandfather was imprisoned and was murdered by the British colonial powers. And she is a very, very devout follower of her own people, and she fights for her people, and she's also a literary figure. So, in this particular story, she basically narrates the story of two women, Mercy and Connie. Mercy is the younger sister, Connie is the married sister who has a child and who's expecting a child. Connie believes in old fashioned views. I wouldn't just call them old fashioned. She believes in traditional views of believing in your own self, of trying to your, making sure that you work hard. Connie is born into, Mercy is born into this system where she sees everybody around her being able to either afford amenities of life or struggling really, really hard. She has seen her own family, her own sister struggle very hard. Now, the idea is not that what Emma Aidoo is saying is not that struggle itself is bad. The idea of a struggle with no end in sight is what she's criticizing. So, Mercy decides to follow what a lot of other people are doing by having relationships with people in higher places, officials who are corrupt nationalist officers, so that she can have good amenities in life. She can provide a little bit of, something for even her sister too. She is independent. She is opportunistic too, but at the same time, she is trying to escape the system or her class that she has been born into. So the story has definite Marxist dimensions to it as well. A person born in a certain class who has no other option but to either work herself very hard or to give in to the demands of these very patriarchal forces where people treat women as simply commodities to be exchanged for goods. So the story also brings into harsh relief the idea of the men in that society. For example, Connie's husband, even though he's married, still has affairs. Is not very careful. If you look at him, he's not exactly the kind of husband anyone would want for themselves. So Mercy also has this particular, model in front of her, I would say, that she does not want to follow. So all of these ideas are being explored in the short story, Two Sisters. So the story begins with, Mercy coming back home to Connie, them having a little bit of discussion, Mercy complaining about her typist job, Connie noticing her shoes and realizing that they are new and more expensive. It just tells you a little bit about the kind of poverty these people experience as well, right? Because just new shoes seem very, a big thing for her. And in the same way, Mercy goes and meets this person who's an official, and they are having, an affair. So that, and through that affair, she is accruing some kind of material benefit. Connie shares this thing with her husband, who actually, instead of being like, no, this is the wrong thing, he actually thinks that, oh, this is a good thing. She's using that to climb higher on the social ladder. And Connie is left alone, thinking that this is a very, very terrible thing to do, because she is giving up her self-respect and her life to, and her dignity to, for material things and material possessions. Later on, at the end, with the new regime in power and the old gone away, Connie thinks that her sister is probably going to settle down now, but it turns out that Connie's sister has decided to take up with someone in power in the new regime, leaving Connie completely devastated at the idea. So that is a situation of things, the situation of the position of, I would say, the position of women, the roles they are relegated to, either an obedient housewife with nothing, of their own, or a professional woman who is stuck in this extremely morbid kind of mundane life where they have to work hard for tiny amounts of money, and they have no option but to either sell themselves or um, uh, or either choose the traditional life or one or the other. So she's critiquing the lack of opportunities for women. She's also critiquing the path certain women take in this particular story. So it is important to keep in mind a few ideas. For example, there is, of course, the nativist attitude about women itself, women that we discussed previously as well. It is also a problem with the male society, the patriarchal society in these countries, which relegate women to a certain kind of role, either a housewife or a mistress. A lack of good paying jobs, a problem of class in post-colonial societies. And women, of course, are on the lowest end of the spectrum as far as class is concerned. So all of these themes are being dealt with by Aidoo in Two Sisters. Now, Achebe deals with a similar kind of theme, but he does it in the civil war between the Igbo and the Biafran people. How the Biafran people, he's portraying the Biafran side of the struggle, and he is showing how the people, this particular official who's married and everything, notices this girl, Gladys. And she is very committed to the fight. She's struggling, she's on the check post, she's a military personnel, but what happens is that the constant delay, the amount of time that the war is taking, the lack of support from the people, monetary support, financial support, even support for food, leads many of these girls to choose survival. So there is a theme of survival that is present in Eta's story as well, Aidoo's story as well, and also in Achebe's story. The idea of survival of women. What is the position of women? What are they relegated to in such a patriarchal system? Of course, there is a lot of devastation, lack of food, starvation that Achebe also portrays. When Reginald, who is in a commanding position, he goes to get food for his family, and he feels guilty too, but at the same time he still manages to have at least access to some food, while there are people in the war who are dying without any food as well. So the question of survival, then linked with the question of survival for women especially, comes up. How Gladys, from a position of she's a military personnel, she's checking cars, she's very devout, she's very passionate about the cause, and then she falls from that particular height to that of a kept woman, because she needs things. Because she kind of starts looking at the world through the point of view of the war, which is constantly ongoing. So between survival and I don't know if I'm going to be alive the next day, that issue emerges, and that places her position and the position of a lot of women into a lot of jeopardy. And the end of the story, where Gladys and the other guy, they die in the car in an attack, that tells you of the shortness of life, of how severe the criticism on them is. But no one looks at the kind of life they are being forced to lead. No one looks at the kind of life they have no option but to lead because of these situations. So basically, both Achebe and Aidoo are criticizing the position of women, criticizing the patriarchal system that places women in this position, and criticizing certain women for their choices as well. Now, the treatment of both authors are going to be different. You will notice that with Achebe being a male author, his treatment of the situation is going to be slightly different. He's looking at it from a man's point of view, from a position of the nationalist pride point of view. That doesn't mean that he's minimizing the feminist position. It simply means that his point of feels different. With Ema Eta Aidoo, however, the position is from the lens from Koni's idea, from her own perspective of what a woman loses through all of this process. So both stories basically discuss multiple ideas, but the theme of survival, the theme of corruption, the theme of nativist character of the patriarchal society, the place of women in a very, very class-driven society as well, are all things that are basically post-colonial issues in these stories that are being discussed. I hope you enjoyed the stories, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you.